Nice to see you. Hello and good morning. Be your own boss, make your own decisions, work for yourself. That's been the message of the Thatcher years. But is hard work, determination and the will to succeed enough? Each day, 10 small businesses go bust. So why do they fail? Where others succeed? And who's to blame? Robert, you've had problems, haven't you, with your business? What happened?
Well, to start with, after the government's encouragement to set up in small business, I decided I would become an independent financial advisor. I got shopfront premises. I got an Alliance and Leicester Building Society agency. We carried on for a few months very successfully. Then the interest rates suddenly soared up and I had a large mortgage to pay, and after a while the business went down. For about a 3-month period we hardly did any business after the interest rate went up 2% in 1 month. The income went down and outgoings went up. And finally, I had to put the house in hock to keep the business going. The value of the house has come down considerably. My mother, my grandmother, they lent me money to help keep me afloat. And now I'm about to go bankrupt.
So you've had a great deal of trouble. Who do you put the blame on? You said interest rates. Is that where you attribute the major responsibility? I
think partly that, but we had the 88 budget, which caused the boom.
Right.
And then to slow down the boom, they increased the interest rates.
Are others who've had difficulties? Are there others who've had difficulties with their businesses? What kind of difficulties? What's happened to you?
I think the major difficulty is cash flow. It has a knock-on effect. You have companies who can't pay you, the bills mount up, you take people to court, the length of time it takes to go through the court is abysmal, and in fact the courts look upon the creditors as dirt and come down on the side of the debtor. You don't get your money in, and that and other problems that one gets as high business rates.
And what has actually happened to your business?
I have now gone into voluntary liquidation.
What was the business?
Printing.
How long were you doing it for?
20 years.
And it's now just gone into voluntary liquidation?
Yes.
Yeah. What's the single most important cause, do you think, apart from what you've talked about, the fact of not being able to get your creditors to pay,
I think, yes,
to pay
it's
up?
definitely the most important cause. There's been two. One, the cash flow drying up, and two, bad advice from the banks.
Simon, what were your problems?
Well, basically, I followed everybody else into the boom times, which was, you know, the mid-80s, and as soon as things started to go downhill, no one really wanted to listen to your problems.
What kind of things caused you to go downhill?
Well, it's just the way the government was really manipulating the economy.
What were you doing? What was the business?
Property.
Yeah, and how long had you been doing it for?
For about 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, and how big was the business?
It was medium-sized, small to medium-sized.
Yeah, and tell me the mechanics of what actually happened to you.
Well, everybody was encouraged to really invest in property at the time. We obviously took various properties on, and
did you
realised the assets to a point, and as soon as it started going downhill, we were forced to sell them quickly.
Do you feel that you were properly equipped to go in business of this kind? Did you have enough information?
Well, I went to the right sources to get the information in the first place. It's just people want to help you, you know, in the good times. When the bad times come, they don't want to help you to the same extent.
Do any of you feel that you didn't have sufficient information either in setting up, running your business, or when you were actually in difficulties, that you needed more help?
Yes, we were made redundant from the firm that we worked for, 2 of us, and we decided that we would try and make a go of it ourselves. And we started up with various help, but the problem was, once we'd got going, there was no one there to keep us going. I mean, we're still in business, but we've had a lot of difficulties.
Philip, is there a problem with information?
Well, information's been mentioned, but I think training is the word which ought to be introduced. People will go into business without preparing themselves sufficiently I mean, there's heaps of courses available. And if they would take some training in running a business as opposed to their particular activity, I think they would save themselves a lot of pain.
That's so true, that there's a lot of bitty information about, but you really have to work hard to go and find it. When you do, it is there, and I honestly don't understand why people, I mean, I don't mean to be unkind, but I don't understand why people who start up a business then say, I started my own business, now help me, I've got problems. I mean, it's your business. You've got to look ahead.
Go on, Simon.
The point I'm trying to make is people don't really understand the mechanics when things can go wrong. What you could be drawn into, you're sucked in really into things that no one really knows about unless you're an expert.
But they do know about. There are business courses. There are
business courses don't teach you that part of business life, do they? They only teach you the part
But
the
with
successful
interest
part.
rates, you have to look, if there's going to be a 2% increase in the interest rates, will I be able to cope? How tight are my margins? If you want to carry on, the responsibility is on you to look at that.
I think
It's all very well for you to say that. We did go on training courses. We had a lot of help. We had help from the National Federation of Small Businesses. And we did everything that we were told to do before we set up. And we were very, very successful. But we've had problems that aren't related to what we were told or to the training we received or to the help we received. And anything that we were told or any courses that we went on wouldn't have helped us in the situation that we found ourselves in.
Michael.
I think, and first of all, on the sort of borrowing, roughly 1 in 2 of smaller firms are actually borrowed. So only half are borrowed at any one time. And I think it's quite important to remember that. But I mean, the training thing is very important, as you so rightly said. I mean, nobody would contemplate becoming a doctor and not going through a very rigorous training and a course to become a doctor. Now, the government have provided lots of courses. There's for local enterprise agencies, there are the small firm service, the Small Business Bureau. We run courses, particularly for female or lady entrepreneurs. We very much encourage that. So there are a lot of
Why do you
courses
particularly encourage female entrepreneurs? He says, looking at the blonde. Do you notice that?
I think
Not enough.
There's not
Not enough. We need more women in
there.
there.
Are more women getting into business
And
now
definitely.
than men, in actual fact.
How
It's
much are
very
the banks contributing to your failure? Who feels about that banks have played a part in all this, in business bankruptcies, business failures?
Well, I'm John McQueen. I'm Secretary of the Association of Bankrupts, so I deal with a lot of cases of business failure. And I think the banks are to blame. I think my chief criticism of the banks is that they're prepared to lend money if the security available. They'll lend any amount of money, regardless of the strength of the business idea. They're not interested in business ideas. They're only interested if there's security there. If there's security there, they'll lend money. And I think that the banks have got to take a big share of the responsibility for a lot of business failures.
David?
John, I can't accept that. I think that you might well have been right that a number of years ago banks would have looked primarily at the security, but I would submit to you that that is no longer the case. What the banks look for now is they look at the underlying business, they will look at the people who are behind that business, the people who are running the business, and they will come to a judgment about the viability of that
Well,
business.
I must take you apart on that. If you look at the last issue of Business Banker International, one of your own magazines, in there's an article that points out that a DTI criticism of the banks for the lending on the basis of security. It also points out, that same magazine, that most business customers in the UK are dissatisfied with the banks. Bankers are not trained properly, they don't know enough about business, they don't know enough about the customers, and I'm afraid I just don't accept what you say.
Let me get someone else, Mike. I'll come back to you, Michael. I want to put other people on banks.
On banks, I mean, can I suggest that the real issue and what's causing a number of problems for small businesses is the way in which the banks have got overexposed in lending to larger businesses. Now, what is often forgotten is that so many small businesses are dependent on doing business with much larger companies that can exert a lot of force on small businesses in terms of their trading relations. The banks have put those larger businesses under a lot of pressure. That's filtering down and causing a lot of pressure on small businesses.
Well, I can accept that your large customers are probably putting you under pressure, but I would say that the banks, certainly the bank that I represent, has put a lot of money and effort into training its managers to be able to get close to their small business customers and to understand those small business customers very much better than was the case in the past. You say that there's evidence that there's dissatisfaction among customers. I would submit that there is also a substantial amount of evidence, quite to the contrary, and I'm sure if we were to go around in the audience that you would find some.
We do both.
I agree with the gentleman before who mentioned that banks have got lots of money to offer to the members of public and to the small businesses. When the Conservative government came, they said that they are here for the small businesses, which helped quite a few small businesses to say, I'll have a go myself. And like the previous gentleman said, there is a lot of money about. Even at this moment,
do you feel that banks offering you money, kind of throwing it at you and making it attractive, even sending you on the solicited literature through the post, and then when you're in difficulties, are they as helpful and imaginative and as sensitive?
No, they are not.
What happens then?
Once you get into problem, I think a stage comes when the bank says, that's it, enough is enough, now we cannot carry on with this. And I don't think they try and sympathize with the problems of the small businesses.
Robert?
Because
the point was raised about security. Can I just come in here? Only lending on security, which in the past has been true, because of course banks have got their depositors who would have to protect as well. But the government introduced a scheme called the Loan Guarantee Scheme, which is lending through the banks, and the government will guarantee 70% of that loan. So it does help somebody who's starting or wants to grow their business who does not have security to offer to the bank, and that's been very successful in giving people the extra money to move forward and expand their business.
When I originally...
So the Loan Guarantee Scheme is something that people can take advantage of, and an awful lot of people have over the last 10 years.
One other thing I find banks do is they take more security than what they need, because they know at the end of the day, if the business gets into problem, they got them by the neck. And I think I find that I'm doing that at present.
I'd like to put a different view on the banks. We ourselves set our company up with a government guaranteed scheme, and currently we find that our bank manager, he's part of a commercial services section, actually spends more time visiting us than we ever do visit him. He's part of our management team. He visits our office, he sits down at the table with his jacket off, goes through our business plan, looks at our cash flows. In return, he wants our monthly figures, good or bad. He wants to know what's happening to our business. He wants to be part of it.
Why is he doing that? Is that because you're in difficulties and he's worried about his money?
Yeah, but it's part of the structure and the relationship that's developed, quite different to when we set the business up 10 years ago.
But obviously a bank manager can't do that with every company he's lending to. He either doesn't have the ability or the time.
This is a commercial services sector of Lloyds Bank, and they have a separate guy that will actually look after 10, 20 customers, business customers, and never ever, it doesn't even work from a bank, works from an office, and does all his business in his clients' offices.
On banks, I saw you getting quite agitated when we were talking about the amount of money
I wanted to agree actually with the gentleman over there, because I think it's very easy for banks do make it very easy. They offer you, they make the offers come flooding through the post, as you said, and they do turn the screw on you when you have problems. I mean, I'm very surprised to hear this gentleman actually say that he has somebody there that's actually giving him helpful advice, because that just doesn't happen. And I know a number of businesses that have failed because they've been caught in this trap. The money's been there easily for them to take up through the bank, and no support to go with it.
Obviously, banks are in business to do business.
Absolutely.
It's a highly competitive market that we operate in, and we're all seeking to increase market share. But I think what we have to remember is that the banks are in the business of taking risk, as indeed are all businesses are in the business of managing their own risks. So I'm sure you must accept that the banks will look to cover their risks by taking security. Now, where the banks can act as a business partner is, I use that term not in the strict legal sense, of course, but in the advisory sense, is when it becomes evident that a business is running into difficulties, and the banks can very often spot that. Not first, I might say.
So if you're in difficulties, you should go early. That's one thing that's come out of this. Go to the bank early and
exactly.
And get what about the government? Has the government anybody feels that what part the government has played?
Can I just go back to the bank?
No, because we're on government. Anybody else on the role that the government's... Here we are in this kind of enterprise culture. Get off your backside, do something, make a go of it. Has the government actually created not just the atmosphere, but the conditions in which small businesses can make a success?
I'm a registered disabled ex-serviceman. For 4 years I was on invalidity, and I decided that I would get up off my backside. I did the courses. I went to the WDA and did the business course. I commuted my pension. I withdrew my life savings. I did a 1-year plan, a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan. And despite Sodom insane going berserk, I drew up my insurance policies and paid up. Now the local authority are going to bring in regulations, which means that I can't use the car initially.
What's your business?
I run a taxi business.
A taxi business,
car taxi business. Yeah. And they're bringing in regulations now where if I put a new car in after the new test date, it can't be more than 25 months old. Now, that's £8,000. Now, 10 cars is £80,000. The interest on that is £40,000. The insurance on top of that is £20,000. No, I haven't got a chance.
You've got difficulty in those kind of circumstances. The government help enough?
Well, I don't think the government actually has help at all, and especially with the interest rate. A lot of people were encouraged to borrow the money, to buy the house and so on. Now, somebody like me, though is not in trouble financially, has to put a lot of money in the houses that we've bought in. So actually that puts us in a lot of problem with the cash flow. Now the interest rate, I would have never imagined in my life that it would have gone somewhere from 10% to 15%.
And so quickly.
And so quickly.
8%, I can remember it was 8%.
Well, yeah.
I borrowed at 8%.
And that's right. Now that means like somebody who's borrowed about £100,000 on a house.
Right.
So
you've made all your plans.
My mortgage has gone from £900 to about £1,500.
And this has affected your cash flow.
It has affected. That's right.
What are you doing, Michael? Come on. What are you doing?
Well, I mean, talking about what the government has done. Well, talking about what the government has done to encourage people to go into business, it's first of all, it's trying to get the climate right. I mean, leave aside the interest rates for a moment, which are very important. But I mean, the general thing of reducing taxation, because going into business is a risk. If you're going to take a risk, you need to have a reward when you succeed, because if you fail, you have a penalty of failing, of course, of going out of business. So we must have a tax low enough so when people succeed, they can really do well out of their success. And we've reduced all the taxes, corporation taxes, income tax, enable corporation tax, capital taxes to help people do it. We've also reduced the regulations. And all this has resulted, let me just give a figure, all this has resulted in the fact that currently there's 1,700 net new businesses starting every week. That is allowing for those who've gone out of business.
Would you mention how many are going out of business now?
Yes, that is a net figure. That is having allowed for those who've gone bankrupt. So it is a success story because that 4 years
Make it answer your question.
was only 500 every week. It's gone up from 500.
Treatment for that patient, and indeed, in some cases,